my Kenvians, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Steven Universe. Today, the episode I'm going to be talking about is Beach Party. And I'm not going to lie, this episode starting out, I was kind of okay with it, but as it went along, the episode just got incredibly interesting and epic, to be completely honest. But let's get into my favorite parts of the episode, starting with it's such a simple thing, but Steven's boogie board. Like, at first I thought maybe he was holding a shield or something like that, but then as they're fighting the giant pufferfish, he uses it as an attack, so to speak, and just gets impaled on the pufferfish's spikes. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. The fact that of course Steven has brought some not exactly effective weapons to battle before, but just this one time it's a boogie board. And the strange thing is, like, his aim was rather accurate, so had he been using an actual weapon or maybe even an actual shield, there's a chance it could have done some form of damage, but since it's just a boogie board, it just got impaled, and that part cracked me up entirely. And the initial fight with the pufferfish as well was rather interesting because, like, no one could really get close enough to do any damage, not even Garnet, basically the strongest one of them all. And then of course Amethyst just comes up and turns into a bat, which I didn't know she could do. I don't remember her turning into, like, inanimate objects before. I'm probably wrong, but she just turns into a bat and poof, the pufferfish just flies away. That was a really cool section. But next, my second favorite part of this episode was the Pizza family. And I guess Pizza is their last names. But I can't really remember anyone's first names, unfortunately. I probably should have written that down, but I didn't. But the entire family was rather interesting, and I'll actually touch on that a little bit more later. Actually, I'll touch on the family a little bit more here in a little bit, but I'll save that for a little bit later in the favorite parts. My third favorite part of this episode was the beach transformations that the gems went through. Well, not even real transformations, but changes in their attire, which I didn't know was a thing, and that actually makes me wonder whether my theory on, I think it was either a theory or my question from the previous episode, and that was whether or not when a gem gets damaged, if their attire changes to suit like where they were damaged. Because of where Pearl got stabbed through the stomach, then there was the wrap around that kind of, looks like a bandage where she got stabbed. So, yeah, I don't know whether this completely blows that theory / question out of the water or what. But I thought it was cool to see their attire changes. It was pretty cool. And I love how Pearl's was just very, casual's not the right word, but very, I can't think of the right word, but basically it's like, not quite as flashy as the other two, shall we say. But yeah, moving on from there, my fourth favorite part of this episode was the volleyball section, where Steven split up the different family members up with the different gems. It's like he got matched with the grandma, whose, again, name I can't remember, Garnet with the dad, and then Amethyst and Pearl with the different sisters. And I mean, obviously it was written by someone, so it actually came from their mind, but I love that they wrote it so that Steven basically matched each gem with a person of a similar mindset, a similar personality, shall we say. I just love the way that they played off of each other, because it basically became, like I was saying, it's like the different personalities match each other, and then when Pearl and the one sister, was it Kiki, I think? That name sounds right for some reason. But Pearl and her partner went up against Amethyst and her partner. I love the way they all played off of each other, and it was just a really enjoyable scene, or set of scenes, that just, it worked really, really well. Now, my fifth favorite part of this episode is when the families started working together. And really, this section solidified the grandma as probably my favorite member of that entire family. Like, she just the entire episode, really, just the way she talked, her mannerisms, I really enjoyed. But then, as we got into that final section, she just really came forward, and I love the way that her and Steven worked together. They took the lead, basically, giving the commands, primarily the grandma, but both of them to a point. And, yeah, I absolutely loved I loved the way that worked. It was just, it was brilliantly written, in my opinion. So yeah, those are my favorite parts of this episode. Now, as for annoyances, big fat zero. I have no annoyances with this episode at all. I actually went back and tried to find some, like even just nitpicky things, but in this 11-minute episode, I honestly didn't have any issues that personally came to mind for me. And I'm sure there's some of you that have seen some of my Discovering Doctor Who that think that might be a little bit weird of me to say that, because I usually try and find at least one thing I have wrong with the episode. But honestly, just like this, and there have been a few other episodes beforehand, I just don't have an issue with. I don't have any annoyances. But of course, that's just my side of the story. If any of you have your own favorite parts of this episode, or even some annoyances you might have had, please do list them in the comments down below. Now, moving on from there, I know I have the list of the different tracks sent to me, but I actually forgot to bring that up, so I'm going to try and incorporate the actual names of the tracks moving forward. I just have to remember. But for me, the two best tracks of this episode were what I call volleyball time, which was during the scene where the different family members got matched up with the gyms, and they were having the little volleyball competition. The music in there was really nice. And then the pufferfish attack at the end, just both of those tracks are absolutely brilliant, and by far the best. Well, yeah, there were a few other tracks I can think of, but those two stood out the absolute most to me. Maybe it's because of what was going on, or it could be the music itself, but whichever reason, they work for me. But okay, next is my quote of the episode. And overall, I have to say that this episode didn't have that many particularly quote-worthy lines, but there was one that stuck out to me that, I don't know whether it was the delivery or maybe it was just kind of what I inferred from the conversation, but it's when Pearl knocks Amethyst, who has turned into a ball, up into the sky, and Garnet is getting ready to spike her down to create the glass from the overheated sand. And Amethyst says, "Be gentle." And Garnet says, "I'll try." And again, it's just, I don't know if I'm just inferring it or what, but the way it was delivered and the look on Amethyst's face, like, "Be gentle," just cracked me up, and was just, I don't know how else to put it. It just worked for me. It's what made that line in particular stand out the most to me. Again, in an episode that I feel like didn't have a lot of really quote-worthy lines, despite the fact that I clearly enjoyed it quite a bit. But before I obviously give my overall thoughts, which should be pretty clear by now, I do have a question for this episode, and it's this. Was the pufferfish, was the giant puffer a gem or just a general monster? And I ask this because at least from what I observed, there didn't seem to be any gems attached to it. Like usually when they go up against these monsters, you can see a gem either inside the mouth of a creature or it's on its back, on its neck, something along those lines. But for this one, again, just from what I can remember, I didn't see any gems whatsoever, and I don't think it just poofed away. I could be wrong there. I probably am, but just on my recollection, it seemed different from the usual gem-created monsters that we have seen before. So yeah, that's my question. Is it a gem, as far as we know, or is it just a general monster that I can only assume will occur from time to time on this show? So yeah, I actually am interested to hear. It's like, if you have an answer for that, please do let me know. But moving on to my overall thoughts of the episode, again, it should be obvious by this point, but I really liked it a lot. Now again, I didn't think there were that many quotable lines per se. There were a lot of funny lines, but very few that really stood out to me. And if you feel differently, let me know what some of your favorite lines were, definitely. But for me, it's just, that would probably be the only real flaw I had with the episode, and it's not really even a flaw because it was well written. All the dialogue felt natural and nicely done. It's just nothing stood out. Except for the case of the quote that I mentioned. Very little stood out above the rest, so they were kind of on par with each other, I guess you could say. But yes, so those are my overall thoughts for this episode. Please do let me know what you think. Did you like this episode? Did you think it was kind of there are certain elements that can, I guess, make it feel like maybe it was a filler episode, I suppose. Of course, with an 11-minute running time, I don't know. But moving on from there, time to get into the next episode, and that is going to be Rose's Room. And that title alone has me very intrigued, very interested to find out what's going to happen. And I honestly just cannot wait. So until next time, everyone, I'm PapaKenn, and I will see you next time for Discovering Steven Universe, Rose's Room. Later.